Hi everyone, my name is Tyler and I'm here to help you with your new 40k army. Now, 40k as a hobby can be very expensive to get into, but my goal is to help you build your new army without breaking the bank while still being able to keep it competitive. Now, today we're going to be talking about the Tau Empire. The Tau are my main army. They are the one that I know the best, and I figured that they would be a great place for us to start. Now, before we get into it, let's talk about some ground rules that we're going to be having for the list building. Number one is we need to make sure that we keep this as affordable as we can. Different armies have different cost points, and those cost points might make some armies more expensive to collect in general, but we're going to be doing our best to utilize box deals in order to keep prices low for ourselves. In addition, we are going to be keeping our prices at MSRP from Games Workshop. Now, I don't recommend that you buy everything MSRP from Games Workshop. Many of your local stores will have discounts. There are online sites where you can get things at a discount, or you could even go to eBay and shop secondhand. There are plenty of ways to get into this that are cheaper than the price tags I'm about to show you. Number two, we're going to be working on these lists in steps. Most games of 40k are played at the 2000 point value. However, that doesn't mean that you can't have games at 500 points, 1000 points, 1500, or whatever you might want. For these examples, we're going to be starting at 500, 1000, 1500, and then 2000 as our final goal. Number three, we're going to be doing our best to avoid any Forge World models. Now, there are a lot of Forge World models that can be very good for certain armies to run, but these models are often very pricey, the resin can be hard to work with, and especially if you're a beginner, there's better options that you can go with. There are no armies that absolutely rely on Forge World at the moment, and so we're going to be avoiding that. Our fourth goal is to try to make lists that have decent competitive viability. Now, a lot of top lists you're going to see multiple copies of very expensive models, but we're trying to build up a collection. These lists that we're going to be building together are going to be designed to do well at more casual tournaments and games with friends, or they might get you some wins at major tournaments, but you're likely not going to get a first place at a major tournament with 40 plus players with these lists. The fifth and probably most important rule that we're going to be talking about is that just because I don't mention a model in my list, that doesn't mean that it isn't good. The most important rule is to collect what you think is cool and what you like. There's an entire side of this hobby that has nothing to do with playing the game itself. And if you don't like building the models or painting the models, then you're probably not going to be that excited about playing with the models. Let's start by talking about who the Tau are. The Tau are an alien conglomerate of multiple races trying to achieve what they call the greater good. If you've ever played Halo, you can think of them as sort of like the Covenant. The Tau use a caste system in order to help separate out different groups based on their genetic makeup. The Fire caste of Tau make the best warriors, the Air caste make the best pilots, Earth caste are their best engineers, and the Water caste are their best diplomats. There's a heavy mecha influence in the Tau. You'll see this on most models that you'll go to pick up. Most combat patrol boxes or boarding patrols or seasonal boxes will have a large amount of various battle suits listed on them. The most defining characteristic of the Tau, in my opinion, is that they are an army that has almost no melee and no psychic capabilities, meaning that they rely entirely on long range shooting combat. Because of this, their guns are particularly deadly and they are very fast. Now, let's talk about some of the pros of collecting Tau. The Tau have a very distinct look from the rest of the game. While most of the game follows the idea of grimdark fantasy, the Tau are more of your traditional sci-fi alien group. On top of their distinct look from the rest of the game, Tau battlesuits all have very distinct looks from each other, which allows for varied armies to feel like a full force instead of 80 of the same model with a slightly different gun or sword. When you bring out a Crisis suit, it is going to look nothing like a Broadside battlesuit or a Riptide battlesuit, and you will be able to identify them immediately. The Tau also have access to auxiliary units. These units give even more variety in the appearance that you would expect to see on a Tau battlefield. The Tau are a fast-moving army with lots of cheap resources that makes it much easier to play an objective-focused game than many other armies would be able to do. This makes it very good for new players who want to try to learn how to actually play for the game without necessarily getting overly punished for any one mistake with one unit. The Tau have a lot of very deadly firepower, and that makes it easier to play a killing focused game in case you want to try that instead of the objective focused game. And finally, the Tau have a huge array of options with their guns, often allowing a unit to fill multiple roles in the list building stage. With most other armies, they'll have access to one, two, maybe three guns, but some Tau units go upwards of having 8 different gun options that can be mixed and matched in any order that you need. So, with all of those great benefits, what are the cons to collecting the Tau army? The Tau are a Xenos faction. That means alien faction in the world of 40k. Xenos factions get a lot less lore than Imperium and even Chaos factions do. This means that you might be waiting a lot longer to find out more new cool stories about your favorite faction. I have not read any of his books, but the main author for a lot of the Tau books is named Phil Kelly. And a lot of the Tau community doesn't really like the way that he writes his books, which means that you might be even more starved for lore than other Xenos factions. The Tau are currently one of the most expensive armies to collect. There are only a couple armies that have a worse point per dollar ratio than the Tau do, which means that if you want to get a full Tau army, you're probably going to be needing to drop a pretty large amount of money. The Tau can be a bit annoying to paint if you do not have an airbrush. Panel lining can take a long time for them if you want them to look super nice, but it's not a requirement for you to panel line any of your units. We've mentioned a couple of times so far about the amount of variety that Tau has with their auxiliary units, and while this is true, there isn't a whole ton of variety in the different types of auxiliary that Tau can run. Primarily, it is the Kroot and it is the Vespid. Both of these serve very powerful roles within the army, but for a faction that has all of this lore about different alien races joining them, there's just not the big of a selection. Tau are a single phase army. You are going to learn a lot about the shooting phase and a lot about the movement phase, but you're not really going to learn very much about the charge phase, and you really will not learn much about the fight phase if you are playing Tau. But Tau are probably one of the most positioning reliant armies, and so you will get very good at that if you stick to this army. Finally, the Tau can currently struggle against armies that either overwhelm them with lots of small units or are focused around very durable units. The Tau really excel at killing that mid-range style of enemy where they're either bringing big units of big enemies or big units of small enemies or medium amounts of medium enemies or anywhere in between. But if they're bringing a lot of different units of small enemies or very small numbers of huge enemies, you might not be able to meet their stat check. The current army rule for the Tau is for the greater good. It's a little bit of a long-winded and complicated example, but here's the basic way to think about it. Your Unit A and your Unit B are firing at enemy Unit C. Unit A can see Unit C, and they tell Unit B, shoot at that target better. If Unit B shoots at anything other than Unit C, they have a worse shooting. The detachment rule for Tau right now is Kalyon. The basic idea of this, once you get to turn 3, your units are going to start doing more damage by pumping out extra shots every time you roll a 6 to hit. So let's dig into the actual list building of Tau now, and let's talk about what we're going to be picking up to start. There are going to be two main branching paths of ideas for how we're going to go through a Tau army. We're either going to be going down a mech style with lots of battle suits, or we'll be going towards a more infantry style with lots of supporting firepower and fire warriors running around. To start off, we're going to be focusing on something that goes a little bit more down that mech style. We're going to be picking up the Tau Combat Patrol. This box has everything that you need to really get started in 40k. It's going to be coming with a variety of infantry that can fulfill different roles. It comes with some great support units, and it even comes with a ghost keel. who is a very, very powerful model right now with a lot of durability, and he's a really cool center model to be able to have as kind of that show off of what your artistic talents can do. Now, alongside the Combat Patrol, we're going to be picking up a Tau Commander. The Tau Commander is going to be a nice little powerhouse of a unit for us early on, but his real power isn't going to show until much later at 1,000 point games and beyond. He really is a amazing support utility unit, but in these smaller point games, he can really pack a very severe punch, especially for his cost. Now, let's talk about how this list is going to start. We're going to be taking that Cadre Fireblade and we're going to be giving him 2 gun drones. This is going to give him a little bit more power when he's out there supporting his Breacher Team unit. After the Cadre Fireblade, we're going to be putting in an Enforcer Commander with a Shield Generator, 3 Cyclic Ion Blasters, and 2 Shield Drones. Now, Cyclic Ion Blasters do not come in the box in enough copies to be able to run 3 as what you see is what you get. But thankfully, most people are okay with you using proxied weapons or don't even know what a cyclic ion blaster looks like, meaning that you can get away with it very, very easily. We're specifically running him as an Enforcer Commander because of his cost, but also because of his durability. Finally, for our characters, our Ethereal is going to be on a hover drone with a gun drone and a shield drone equipped to him. The gun drone will allow him to do things like advance and do actions, which will help you out in a lot of your objective focused games. Shield drone just gives him a little bit of extra durability. Moving on to the Breacher team that is going to be supported by your Cadre Fireblade, they're going to be running around with a gun drone for the extra added firepower, but they're also going to have a Guardian drone with them to really help them feel a lot more durable than they should, given the defensive profile that Breacher teams are going to be running around with. After the Breacher team, we move on to the Stealth Suit team, who are going to be running around with a gun drone and a marker drone. The Stealth Suits are able to do what we call a forward deploy, meaning that they can deploy outside of your deployment zone. So they can very quickly get up the board, stop your opponent from making progress, or just do very helpful little actions all over the board to make sure that you're able to score the points that you need to win the game. Finally, we have the Ghostkeel Battlesuit. Now, you can equip him with more or less whatever you want, but I personally like the Fusion Collider along with the Twin Fusion Blaster. The reason for this is that the Breacher team already does a very good job of killing mid-range enemies and small enemies. The Enforcer Commander already does a good job of killing mid-range enemies and small enemies, and so having the Fusion Collider as a dedicated anti-tank weapon just fits that bill very nicely to kind of clean up the edges of the list for what you might be missing. Now, after we're done collecting our 500 point Tau list and we're getting ready to expand it a little bit more and try to move forward with more ideas, we're going to be taking a bit of a direction towards the Crisis Battle Suits. These are a really powerful workhorse unit for the Army. They are where most of your power is going to fall, and they pair very nicely with the Commander, who will now be being run as a Cold Star Commander. Alongside the Crisis Battle Suit, we're going to be picking up 2 boxes of Piranhas. These are cheap, fast-moving scout models that are able to continue to assist us with our goal of being able to have a good objective scoring game while still being able to give the Piranha some anti-tank killing weaponry to help out the Ghostkeel in its job of dedicated anti-tank. When we look at the additions that this is going to make to our list, we can see that the Cadre Fireblade and the Ethereal are really having no major changes. But the Cold Star Commander is going to be replacing the Enforcer Commander. In addition, he's going to be equipped with 4 Cyclic Ion Blasters, 2 Shield Drones, and the enhancement Exemplar of the Callion. This will allow him to trigger his Army rule 1 turn earlier than normal, meaning that the Crisis Suits come online for their damage much quicker. The Crisis Suits are going to be put into one large 6-man unit. Each of them are going to be equipped with 3 Cyclic Ion Blasters, 1 Shield Generator, and 2 Shield Drones apiece. This means that they are going to have a lot of firepower and a very, very good amount of durability. The Piranhas are going to be run as 2 individual 1-man units, both equipped with Fusion Blasters and Seeker Missiles. These are going to do a lot of the scout moving for us, a lot of the move blocking for us to make sure that our other units are able to stay safe, and also be a lot of anti-dedicated tank power. They are kind of an all-around powerhouse unit, especially for their cost. Now, given that the piranhas are going to be taking care of a lot of our objective needs, as well as making sure that we can punch through those heavier tanks, the stealth suits are going to be staying a little bit further back and playing a more supportive role, enabling the crisis suits to be as powerful as we can possibly make them, as the crisis suits really are the core backbone of the army, especially at this point value. From this point, the Tau list is going to break off into two further splinters. The first one we're going to be talking about is a generalist list, where you're going to be picking up a larger variety of models so that in case something gets changed, you aren't necessarily going to have to buy an entire new set of units. This is going to involve buying a second combat patrol, an additional box of stealth battle suits, and a Pathfinder team. Now, because of the second combat patrol, we're going to be able to bring in a second unit of breachers alongside another cadre fireblade who will be leading them. The ethereal in this case will not be getting used. However, we are still getting a lot of value out of the box as we're going to be running 3 total units of stealth suits and 2 ghost keels. Because we now have 3 units of stealth suits, we can have a little bit more variety in how we want to use them. We can have some of the stealth suits be forward deployed to handle objectives, and we can still have more that are going to be back in reserves, enabling our crisis suits, our piranhas, and our ghost keels. The second ghost keel is going to give us even more durability to be able to hold things in the center of the board, while the crisis suits are dancing their way around, doing all of the damage we need. From this point, we're going to be rounding out our list and going into 2,000 points. First off, we're going to be picking up Commander Shadowsun, 2 Hammerhead gunships, and then 2 units of broadside battle suits. The reason that we're going to be doing it in this specific way is that it allows us to pick up Commander Shadowsun, who is a great utility piece with her aura of rerolls and her lone operative ability, similar to what the Ghost Keels have, meaning that she is very hard to kill and remove from the board. We're specifically buying 2 boxes of Hammerheads because the Hammerhead has the unique property of being able to be built as a Skyray gunship, a Hammerhead, or a Devilfish depending on what you leave as the top of the vehicle. This is really powerful because it means that whether or not the Skyray gunship or the Hammerhead are better, you will have access to that as a tool in your arsenal. In addition, if Devilfish are very powerful for your army, you can just take the gun off and run it as a Devilfish and still be completely fine. The broadsides are going to be run together in one 2-man unit. They are going to be equipped with heavy rail rifles, seeker missiles, and a weapon support system. This means that they are going to be our true dedicated anti-tank force. The Skyray gunship will be equipped with 2 accelerator burst cannons and all of its regular weaponry. However, be aware that the Skyray gunship and the Hammerhead gunship are the exact same cost, meaning that you will be able to swap between them depending on what you feel fits your army better. The Devilfish as a dedicated transport will be taking one of the units of Cadre Fireblade Breacher teams. They are going to be able to do whatever role you need, while the other Breacher team can start off in reserves, start off in your deployment zone, or do whatever you need them to do. Overall, this is a very balanced army list where we're not going too hard in any one direction. We're really leaving a lot of flexibility open to ourselves. We're giving ourselves the opportunity to play around with objective-focused boards with a good amount of killing power, while not necessarily going all in on buying as many Ghost Keels as we can, or Crisis Suits as we can, or Hammerheads as we can. And we're really kind of taking this middle line. If you were to start Tau from scratch, not really knowing much about the army, this is the direction I would personally recommend. Now, let's talk about where this list would go if at 1500 points we decided we wanted to go all in on killing things as hard as possible with as many Crisis Battlesuits as we can slam on the field. This list is going to involve us picking up 1 more unit of Crisis Battlesuits, 1 more box of Tau Commander, 2 boxes of Stealth Battlesuits, and 1 Pathfinder team. This list is going to be running a second copy of the Cold Start Commander with the exact same loadout, except this commander cannot run Exemplar of the Callion as we already have it on the first Cold Start Commander. The Cold Start Commander without Exemplar of the Callion will be attached to the 3-man Crisis Suit brick that will all have 3 cyclic ion blasters, a shield generator, and 2 shield drones as kind of a second strike force that is able to back up the primary crisis suit unit. As mentioned before, the 3 units of stealth suits are going to give us plenty of variety in how we want to play them, and the Pathfinders are still going to be doing the same job of scouting and guiding, and potentially some objective play. From this point, in order to round ourselves out at 2,000 points, we're going to be picking up Commander Shadowsun, Commander Farsight, and 2 more boxes of Crisis Battle Suits. The key thing to note about this point in your list is that you are going to have 15 Crisis Suits split up among 3 units, 2 6-mans and 1 3-man. Those 3 Crisis Suit units are going to be getting led by some variety of the Cold Star Commander with Exemplar of the Callion, the Cold Star Commander without Exemplar of the Callion, and Commander Farsight. It is going to be matchup dependent on which unit will be getting led by who, but the general rule of thumb is 1 6-man will always be led by your Exemplar of the Callion team. Commander Shadowsun is still going to be a phenomenal aura support piece, while Commander Farsight being paired with any Crisis Suit unit is going to make them incredibly lethal from within 9 inches of the enemy. He is the master of the short blade for a reason. This list is substantially more aggressive than the balanced list. You are not looking to take a long objective game. You are looking to get in there and crush your opponent. That doesn't mean that you are going to go all in on turn 2. You're still going to need to wait for turn 3 for your army rule to kick in, but you are going to blast opponents off the table with this list. You are kill first, score objectives later. After all, your opponent can't beat you if they don't have anything to score points with. Now, let's say that you took a look at that and you thought, well, the battle suits are cool, but I really like the idea of infantry and heavy fire support backing them up more. That feels a bit more true to an army to me. This is going to be the direction for you. We're going to be starting off with the combat patrol, just like last time, but instead of picking up a commander, we're going to be picking up a hammerhead gunship box. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the Hammerhead has the beautiful ability to be ran as a Hammerhead, a Skyray, or as a Devilfish. We're going to be running this one as a Devilfish that's going to be supporting Breachers and a Cadre Fireblade who now has Exemplar of the Callion, as we do not have Crisis Suits who are going to be able to use it better. We're still going to be running the Ethereal with a Gun Drone, Hover Drone, Shield Drone, the Stealth Suits with their Gun Drone and their Marker Drone, and we're going to be running the Ghost Keel Battle Suit with its Fusion Collider and Twin Fusion Blaster, as this list still has all the same problems as we mentioned earlier, with the Ghost Keel being the premier early anti-tank force. After we are done with our 500 point list and we're ready to move on, we're going to be picking up a second combat patrol and 2 more piranhas. Just like last time, the piranhas are going to be filling in that same niche role, and the second combat patrol is going to just be reinforcement of what is already good about our army. The second Cadre Fireblade that we add in is going to not be able to run Exemplar of the Callion for previously stated reasons, and this time we are actually going to run the second Ethereal with a Gun Drone, Hover Drone, and Shield Drone. Now, they're both going to just be objective holders that are going to run around and do little silly things all over the board. They aren't being led with any units, but that doesn't mean that they do not serve a purpose. What is critical is that we are not able to get multiple command points per turn by having 2 Ethereals on the battlefield at once, due to the way that CP generation works in each battle round. With the 2 units of stealth suits, we're going to be doing all of the usual fun stealth suit stuff. Now, what's critical is that the Breacher teams, while they very much enjoy being guided, they don't need it quite as badly as the Crisis Suits do, meaning that the stealth suits in this list have a lot more options for who they want to spot for, whether it's the Piranhas with their anti-tank weaponry, the Ghost Keel with its anti-tank weaponry, or the Breachers, who are going to make great use of hitting on 2s. At 1500 points, we are going to be picking up Commander Shadowsun, 1 unit of stealth battle suits, 2 more Hammerhead gunships, and 1 Devilfish. Now, Commander Shadowsun and the 3rd Stealth Suit unit are going to do the exact same things as we mentioned earlier. Shadowsun's going to give out her aura of reroll 1s, which is great for Breachers if she's able to be in range of them, and Stealth Suits are going to run around and do objectives and guide for you. The two Hammerhead boxes that we pick up will both be run as Sky Rays, while the Devilfish will be playing as an actual Devilfish. What is important to note is that Commander Shadow Sun is also a great support piece for Sky Rays and Hammerheads if the correct situation arises. Rounding this last out at 2,000 points, we are going to pick up one more unit of Fire Warriors, one unit of Pathfinders, 2 units of Broadside Battlesuits, and 2 more Devilfish boxes. Now, it is important to note that the reason that we are picking up 2 more Devilfish boxes instead of a Hammerhead box is that we are already at capacity on Sky Rays for this list, and we don't really want to run Sky Rays and Hammerheads. In addition, the Devilfish box is $10 cheaper overall, meaning that by having bought 3 total Devilfish boxes and running them as Devilfish, we do save about $30 on the end package. One of the ethereals on Hoverdisk that we have been running will be proxied as a Cadre Fireblade, so that we are able to run 3 units of Breachers, all with Cadre Fireblades, all inside of Devilfish. This is going to be our primary frontline unit, while the Piranhas and Stealth Suits are able to back them up. The Pathfinders will also be able to do their own fine job of controlling objectives. We have a lot of scouting and a lot of guiding in this list for things like broadsides, sky rays, and the breachers in order to make sure that most of our units are operating at full capacity at all times. Now, there are plenty of units that I did not talk about today that are great additions to a Tau army. The Riptide Battlesuit is totally viable at tournament level and has won tournaments. It is my favorite model in the game, but I don't have it in any of these lists. The Tetras are also phenomenal units, but they are Forge World resin, which means that they are harder to work with, even if they are arguably the best unit in the entire book for us right now. This means that I also did not include a lot of my favorite secondary mission units, such as Kroot Hounds or Vespid Stingwings. There are plenty of choices in the Tau Index that are completely viable and perfectly fine to run. These are just some ideas to get you started with the best budget that I could, as some of those units are maybe a little bit worse than their competitors in most jobs that they would want to do, or they are just frankly too absurdly expensive for what you are getting. I hope that this guide helps you get a good start to Tau. It is a phenomenally fun army that I cannot recommend enough. If you have any feedback on the video or any feedback on my list, please leave it in the comments below. I am looking forward to trying to improve these as I continue with armies that I am less familiar with. Thank you for watching.